Good evening. Welcome to my podcast entitled The Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright, Jr. It is a pleasure to have you viewing our program this evening. Over the past 23 years as a professional educator, I have had the privilege of learning and getting to meet and know some amazing educators. Tonight's guest is no exception to that list of amazing educators. This podcast is designed to make sure that we keep you informed on what good leadership is. Our initial focus is going to be on educational leaders. Later on, we'll look to expanding to other disciplines down the road. During the next few months, you will hear from local and state leaders at the public school level with leadership, as well as higher education with leaders to come. Tonight is episode 3 of the Wright Experience. My guest tonight is absolutely wonderful. This gentleman is what I would call a rising star amongst the superintendent ranks. In just a short time, he's been selected by his peers to represent our region, the northeastern part of North Carolina, at the state level. And ladies and gentlemen, we don't just hand those awards out. My guest tonight is Mr. Oliver A. Holley. Mr. Holley is the superintendent of Tyrell County Schools. His leadership has led to a renewed focus on student achievement, behavioral health, and strengthened communication amongst those who work and live within the district. Mr. Holley has had numerous administrative roles within his 20-year career. He served as the Chief Human Resource Officer for the Perquimans County School District, Principal, Assistant Principal, Dean of Curriculum, and the Dean of Students for Northampton County Schools. He's also served as the Director of After-School Programs for the Weldon City Schools District. He began his educational career as a middle grades teacher in Bertie County Schools. Mr. Holley is a firm believer of service and continued learning. In 2017, he was appointed by the North Carolina Governor, Mr. Roy Cooper, to serve a 4-year term on the Board of Trustees for the North Carolina Teacher and State Employee Retirement Commission. He also serves on several state and local boards, as well as committees. Mr. Holley is a graduate of Elizabeth City State University, receiving his Bachelor of Arts degree in 2001. He went on and completed his Master of School Administration degree at Cambridge College in 2006. Additionally, his quest of continuous growth, Mr. Holley successfully completed the North Carolina Association of School Superintendents Aspiring Superintendent Cohort in 2017. He is currently a participant in the ongoing professional development initiative with the North Carolina Association of School Superintendents Next Generation Superintendent Development Program. Mr. Holley is married to Mrs. Natasha Coley Holley, and he has 2 children, Aiden, age 11, and Alyssa, age 7. Mr. Oliver Holley, welcome to the Wright Experience.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wright. Good afternoon, evening. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can't believe Aiden is 11. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing,
Okay.
man. It is amazing.
It is. Well, welcome aboard tonight. Glad to have you here. Sorry for the delay. I had a bit of a conflict, but we got it worked out. So it's a pleasure to be here and have you aboard, and just excited about having you on our show tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad you asked, and looking forward to the experience, the Wright Experience.
Absolutely. So we'll start off by asking you to just talk to us a little bit about your current role as superintendent of Tyrell County Schools and some of the wonderful things that are going on in your district that you'd like our audience to know about.
So first of all, yes, October of 2018, I was blessed with the opportunity to be selected as the next superintendent in Tyrell County. So coming in and just working, the first thing that I've been identified is the fact that it's Eastern North Carolina. You got to love Eastern North Carolina. I was blessed to have the opportunity to be familiar with this area, as I'm an avid hunter. And so ever since I was born, I've been in Tyrell County hunting and never knew that I would actually be working here in this capacity. But we have a wonderful, wonderful, great staff of students, well, actually staff, students, and stakeholders. Some of the things that we're working on is we were able to introduce a one-to-one experience. We were actually in the process of going one-to-one when I got here in October, and we were able to complete that task. Lord and behold, something happened called COVID, and not even understanding that one-to-one, and then now with COVID, what that would look like. That was a big task for our school system. So I'm very thankful that we were able to convert the district into a one-to-one district. Also, we've been working on a lot of different things as far as renewing our human resources department, just updating and transitioning is what I would call to not from paper to pencil to actually automating our actual HR department, our hiring process, and a lot of our paperwork that we've been able to do. And then committing to working with our school board to make improvements as we see fit. As we all know in this business, our first thing and our first aim is student achievement. So working with our principals, our staff, our students, our families, to make sure that everything we're doing is focused on moving our students forward and making sure that they have what they need to go on to become prosperous adults.
So, Mr. Holley, you mentioned automating HR, and that's something that we're in the process of doing in Hertford County after all these years. So, tell us a little bit about what format are you using, and what and about the growing pains. You're a former HR person, so I
Yes.
know you got some upper hands on us here in terms of that. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I can tell you the thing is, one, so I want to take you back a couple of years before I actually was superintendent. It was actually under the past superintendent at that time, Dr. Dunsmore. Unfortunately, our community suffered a very bad flood. And so our central office actually flooded. We lost a lot of records. We lost a lot of paperwork. You know, we had HR files that we can't even find. And so one of the things that has been a task for my HR department is actually rebuilding those files and then actually transporting them into our Link software. And so coming from Perquimans, I actually was blessed at that opportunity to bring Link into that district. And then when I got here in Tyrell, we had actually begun using Link, but we weren't using it at its full capacity. And so that's what the process is for us. But you would be amazed how many high schools do not exist when you start talking about employees trying to find paperwork from 30, 40, 50 years ago from high school. So that has been a task, and it's only been able to be done because of the hard work from my HR department.
Very good. So whenever we can use our past experiences to inform our future, that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
Exactly.
So talk to us a little bit about some of your, I guess we would call them aha moments that you've had, particularly since you've been superintendent.
Well, Dr. Wright, I can tell you one thing. When I signed the contract in October of 2018, I had no clue that in just a few months, we would be dealing with a national pandemic. And so this being my first superintendency and coming into it, being thankful to have mentors such as yourself, other individuals across this state and actually outside of the state, the aha moment is you can't do everything right then. You and us as leaders, we understand, we come in, and I'm guilty of it. As I walked in the door in October, I thought I was Superman and thought that Oliver Holley could do everything. And then once you get there and you realize you're running this race and you're like, hold on, we've got all these pieces, that were in this district before me, and just stopping and saying, okay, Oliver, stop running and listen to these individuals because they know, they are been here, they know what's going on, and just being able to understand as a leader, you have to work as a team. And so that was one of the aha moments, coming in fresh out of Perquimans thinking, first superintendency, I can run through a brick wall, but just having that moment of realizing that, no, you can't do it by yourself. It takes a team and you have to rely on your teammates. Another aha moment, I think, for us in Tyrell and just for myself, being here is, a lot of times we forget that our students need to be in that decision-making process. One of the things that I was able to do to come in is we started around a tour of just talking tour with our students and just being able to hear things from them. Matter of fact, yesterday at lunch, I had a student pull me to the side and said, Mr. Holley, can we get the lines painted on the basketball court? And I realized, yeah, if that's something that our students would like to have in the community, let's paint the lines on the basketball court. So listening to all of your stakeholders and understanding that your kids, in your school system, they know a whole lot more than people want to give them credit for.
That also shows some school pride too, doesn't it? That
Exactly.
they cared enough about to want that done. So you talked a little bit already about the pandemic. So what are some of the specific challenges that you faced with this COVID-19 pandemic, and how have you and your school district navigated through them?
So one of the things is we are actually scheduled to return. We've been back to school in face to face in a hybrid model of face to face and in remote instruction since January 4th. We were actually scheduled to come back in October. However, with some things going on in the district and planning, we could not re-enter in October. But since January 4th, we've been back. Um, One of the things, and it's something that all of us are facing, and I just think that it hits us a little bit harder because we're the smallest, well, the second smallest district in the school in the state right now, is just our staffing. This is the problem right now. I think when the last numbers, we've had 42 individuals in our district who have actually been tested positive for COVID. But then the big thing is we weren't able to trace that to transmission within our building. It was from the community. And much like you in Hertford County and others, we have a lot of staff members that do not live in our community, so they commute in from other counties. And so when you start looking at your local numbers, you see Tyrell doesn't have high numbers of COVID, but then when you look at the staff member rate, we do. And so when those individuals are out, it poses a problem. And so all of us are facing a substitute shortage. We all know that a lot of our substitutes are retired educators, and they're in that higher demographic. Looking at the CDC guidance, that does pose a problem. And then, quite honestly, when you retire, you have choices. You have choices if you want to turn that pillow loose in the morning when you hear the school bus go by and go in and fight another day, or you can stay home. And so that's been one of the hardest challenges. Another one for us is Dr. Wright, being one of the smallest school systems. You probably have, being familiar with Hertford County and living years in Hertford County, and there was a point in time I used to work out and I would run in the mornings through your high school parking lot. You've got just as many buses in your high school parking lot than we operate in our whole entire district. And so when you're talking about a school system of just under 650 kids, but you're talking about a fleet of 9 to maybe 11 buses if we have drivers, and then the fact that we're rural, that does pose a problem. The other thing that I would say before we go to your next question is, many of us in Eastern North Carolina, internet. We have communities here in Tyrell. Quite honestly, if you get out a 1 mile radius of the town of Columbia, you run into not only internet issues, but cell phone signal issues. And so when you're talking about being equitable and you're looking at our families in Gum Neck and Alligator and, other parts of our community, Kilkenny, that is a challenge for our families that are in some of these parts of our county.
And even then, people look at Hereford as being a larger place, and it is square miles and everything than a county like Tyrell. But even here, I live right in Ahoskie, the town of Ahoskie. I've got good internet connection, but I can ride you 5 miles north, south, east, or west, either way,
Exactly.
and we're going to drop coverage. So that's a major burden for us, those of us that are trying to serve all children. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. So we're hearing a lot of talk right now, Mr. Holley, about learning loss, and the fact that our kids have lost all of this learning during this pandemic and so forth. And we're getting questions about how we're going to catch them up. What are we going to do? So talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you guys are thinking about or looking at to help with learning loss.
So first of all, learning loss, as we all know, is true. It is happening. However, though, I want to challenge individuals that when you start talking about learning loss, I think that we're looking at what we're typically laser focused in on learning. I look at the whole learning experience as far as a lot of the work that is being discussed in the state around, the trades. So yes, a lot of our kids that, do better in our CTE courses. Yes, I can understand the learning losses. So I just don't want, and I know it's not with you, I just don't want us to get lost in the conversation when we start talking about learning loss. Everyone starts talking about, reading and writing and, social studies. No, we have to look at the learning loss for our students that were in those trades. One of the things that we ran into last year with the pandemic, we have kids that were in our health allied class who had completed all of the coursework. And then when the pandemic hit, they could not go out and do their interns in our rest homes and in our community centers. And so we had to try to find ways to work around that. Here in Tyrell County, we offer a licensure for our students to get certified in pesticide use. This is a big farming community. So when the pandemic hit, okay, we were scrambling, trying to figure out, we had four young men that were ready to go out and get certified to be certified with pesticide. We had to work around that loophole and found a way to get them. I won't call the city, but we sent them to another city that had a little more relaxed COVID perspective on things. And we got those young fellows, certified as well. So when you look at that, you have to be innovative in those ways. But when we're talking about learning loss for our at-risk students, we are in the planning stages of our summer program. Here in Tyrell County, we have a beautiful partnership with our JCPC and our local court system that we are able to offer what is called CATS. I think it's sort of like what you used to have in Hertford County. I think it was Freedom School, if I remember correctly. But we have that same type of model where we can actually take our students and work with them during the summer on some of those decision-making skills, some of those best practices, some of the things that's going to make them awesome young men and women in society. So trying to figure out how we're going to put all of this together in conjunction with 150 hours of 30 days of mandatory remediation. I could tell you, if I had hair, it would be pulling out right now. But it goes back to what I said earlier, relying on our team. And so our principals, Ms. Cheryl Hams at the elementary school, Ms. Linda Mathias at our middle school, and Mr. Bill Ziegler at the high school, and our AP, Ms. Joelle Brothers at the elementary school. They have been working very hard and trying to work with our teachers to identify what are we going to do to bring our babies back in. And then don't forget about what are we going to do to bring our staff back in, because that is going to be a challenge. You and I both know our staff, people saying they've been working their butts off, and they have, but they have been working triple time, double. I mean, it has been ridiculous. I heard somebody today in a conference say, people are thinking that teachers are working a 7.5 hour, day. No, our teachers are working 14 hours and then giving up their Saturdays and their Sundays to make sure that they're doing everything that we can for our students. So to get back to your original question, is just planning. How can we bring our babies back? How can we get them back into our school? How can we hook them and put them in front of our strongest teachers to make up what we're looking at as a learning loss and just prepping them for the next year?
I also think, and I'd like to hear your points on this, I also think that we need to understand that this learning loss that we're calling it may take more than a summer, 5, 6 weeks or what have you, to truly catch children up. We're going to have graduated efforts that are all inclusive to make sure that children are getting what they need to move forward. So thanks for that. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit about you have the unique role. You didn't know I was going to ask you this question. You are a fairly new superintendent, and you are a dad of school-age children. You've got 2 elementary-age children. So how do you navigate that, and do you find yourself making some decisions based on what you learn from your children? In my case, my youngest son was a senior in high school, believe it or not, my first year as superintendent. So I didn't really have the challenge that you have with them being in elementary school. So,
well, I can tell you this much. I never forget this. I was interviewing for an assistant principal job. Well, actually, it was a principal job in Northampton County at Central Elementary School. I'd been there as dean of students. The one and only Mary Harrell, the great Mary Harrell.
okay.
Anybody from Eastern North Carolina knows what I'm talking about. She was retiring. And I remember sitting in and after the interview having a conversation with the superintendent at the time, Dr. Eric Bracy, and he said something to me. And my wife was pregnant at the time. He said, "Holley, you're going to do great things." He said, "But you know what's going to change your outlook on being an educator and an administrator?" I said, "What?" He said, "When your wife has that child." He said, "When you have children, you change as a leader." He said, and I didn't believe it. I was like, "Okay, Dr. Bracy, what you talking about?" He had 2 kids. I had 2 of them that were at my school, and that rings very true. And so being a father, it's very interesting for my children to understand that I'm dad, and that dad doesn't need to know everything as superintendent. And so, just today I had a call from my son. I was in the middle of a conference call, and my son was calling me on FaceTime. I was like, Aiden, what's going on? He said, Dad, the internet's going out and like 14 kids in my class dropped. I said, Aiden, thank you for letting me know. I would direct that to the technology team. That is what they're smart. That's their lane. So, but it does make you think about it, but also, Dr. Wright, as you can't make decisions based off of what I think my kids. Prime example, we did not return with middle school sports here in Tyrell County, and it was a big blow for us. I'm gonna just be honest. Now selfishly, I could have said yes, bring middle school back because I got a sixth grader, that would have been eligible to play, but it just wasn't safe. And working through the board, our decision was okay, we can't bring middle school sports back. Quite honestly, our highest turnover right now is in sixth grade at the middle school, which is the grade that my son is in. And so, our school, I'm going to recruit and find the strongest teachers, regardless if it's my child or my neighbor's child, because who we put in front of our teachers, who we put in front of our classroom every day makes a difference. And yeah, it helps me as a father, but it also, I have to understand that I'm the father of 650 something other kids. And, they're not technically mine, they're not on my taxes, but I have the responsibility of making sure that they get the best educational experience as well.
Beautiful said, and it is a joy to have them in your district, and you're to be commended for making that decision to have them with you, because everybody doesn't do that. So, as we know, so you talked a little bit already about some of the people that you look up to. I'm glad I was on that list, but tell me who are some of the sources, and where are some of the sources that you depend on as you go about this leadership journey?
Well, first of all, it's my heavenly father. That's the first thing, and then my earthly father. I'm very fortunate to still have both of my parents with me. And, I just go back, I thought about if this question would be asked, and then I wondered and realized we only had about 40 minutes, and I could take up about 40 minutes of that time because, Dr. Wright, I always say I've learned from everybody I've worked with or come encounter with. And because I look at it like this, you either taught me something that I needed to do, or I saw something you did that I didn't need to do. And so, I take that approach. I learn from everyone. We have the blessing of having educators in this state, but then just quite honestly out of state. I've been communicating for years with individuals that have gone out into other states, have been in education. I sit here to this day, I haven't talked to them recently, but the first superintendent to give me a job, in Bertie County, Dr. Lord, and I just started talking about him. I just lost his name right then. But John F. Smith Sr. There you go. John F. Smith Sr. He still is a mentor to me. Connie Richardson over there in Bertie County, she called me. I was in highway patrol school, thought I wanted to be a trooper. And she called me. She said, boy, you do not need to be a highway patrolman. I got a job down here. You need to talk to Nick Shook and Bobby Osina. And so I talked to them, and then they took me out of highway patrol school, and it's been there ever since. But, I'm fortunate through our organization with Jack Hope. I speak with him all the time, Patrick Miller, yourself, Dr. Jackson, Jerry Oates, Dr. Robert Taylor, Dr. Catherine Edmonds, just everybody. The beautiful thing about being a new guy is when I walked in my first superintendent's meeting, I can honestly say that so many people decided to take me under their wings. And I mean, from Chip Buckwell, who just retired and is going home, to Bo Codwell, to the middle of the state, just individuals that are educators have done that. So I could give you a long list, but I'll be here for 40 minutes, Doc.
Sure. But that's great. We do have an awesome group of leaders in the district, and everybody is so willing to help. That's absolutely the case. So rural districts like yours and mine, we have a difficult time recruiting and retaining quality personnel. About time we get them trained, it seems that they go elsewhere. So take a couple moments, if you will, and just talk to us about some things that we could do to better, or that some needs that we have to recruit and then ultimately retain quality personnel.
Well, the first thing is we've got to look at growing our own. That's the first thing. We need to start looking at middle school students and our high school students and having those conversations with those that may be interested in coming to the field of education. We were lucky and blessed to hire in the last 2 years 2 former students who had gone out, graduated. We were able to get them back into the community, and they're now working in our school system as teachers. And so just being able to identify those individuals and just have those conversations. One thing that I've been fortunate enough to do is, quite honestly, for the last, I want to say 8, 9 years, I've had the opportunity to guest lecture with some classes at Elizabeth City State. And so being able to go in those education programs and do that guest lecturing, the first thing I do is give out my cell phone number. And then the second thing I do is I text to make sure that it's correct, that they have my number. So kind of keeping in contact with those sophomores and juniors and, seniors to build those relationships. So when I have job openings, just they can keep an eye on Tyrell County schools. And so that's one thing. The other thing, Dr. Wright, is we have to do is we have to have for those beginning teachers coming in very strong BT programs. As you know, the state requires us to provide them with 3 years of support. Honestly, we have to support them, I believe, in the first 5 years, because 3 years, you just can't drop the ball and say, okay, you go fly out the nest on your own. They still need support. And so having strong BT programs, but then looking at how you can position your current employees in roles of leadership. That's one thing that we have to do. And so identifying those high flyers and identifying those that need a little push, put them in another realm. You can actually see them spread their wings and they may develop into something else. So I think, and then just quite honest, the conversations. When you talk to people, they kind of tell you what they want to do. And if you have the means to put them in a position to show that skill or sharpen that skill, I think that that's upon us that we need to do. Quite honestly, I think the last thing that we have to do is when people leave you, I'm in a situation here in Tyrell that just to my east, a couple of miles, there's a neighboring district that can throw money out the window with teachers, and they do. But we have to get back to what can we do, knowing that we don't have the resources that other districts have, but that can make a difference to, allow our employees and staff members, and quite honestly, our families to stay with us.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. All very good, very, very good ideas. And thank you for that. So somebody that you would be mentoring or trying to help, what advice would you give to people who aspire to be in the superintendency? Wait until after the pandemic. Is that the first? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think that'd be the first one. Wait after. So I'm going to say this, and I don't want it to come out the way that it's going to sound. So I probably shouldn't have prefaced it like that. I was fortunate enough to become a superintendent at 38. And, when you start doing the math and you look at our life expectancy as far as being superintendents, it's not too many people like yourself that's been around, in districts for a long time. But I just would caution those that are younger in age and younger in education. I know the beard probably throws everybody off that's looking, was like, oh my God. But realize and identify if it's what you want to do at that point in career, because you and I both know boards can change, seasons can change, mandates can change. You just have to understand that your family is going to be on this trip with you. It's just not you signing a contract. Your family is signing this contract with you to some extent. And so, just put yourself in networking positions to learn. I wouldn't jump and tell folks to just jump out there and do it just because you want to do it. You need to take time. I was fortunate to have several positions that allowed me to see different parts of Eastern North Carolina. It allowed me to understand K-12 education all the way from pre-K all the way to 13, 13-year students. And so I think that was a blessing to me. And also understand that you're going to have to network. And in that networking, you're going to have to close your mouth sometimes and listen and learn. And, I love to talk. You and I both, we got that gift that we love to talk. But we also understand that sometimes we got to zip our lips because there's wisdom being shared. And so that's one of the things that I would just definitely say is, a, network, put yourself, get to conferences, network with other individuals, learn what's going on in other areas, and also develop a critical friends network. I can call on you. I had an issue going with athletics. I talked to you about it. I called other individuals across the state. I called Chip way out there to the east, to the west in the mountains, because I knew he was an athletic guru too. And so I took your information, Chip's information, everybody else I talked to help me formulate my final decision. And that was only, able to happen, that y'all would pick up the phone, is because I was able to network and build that relationship with you.
So the networking and continuing to keep those connections and being smart enough to depend on them, because some people have connections and they won't depend on them. So that's certainly key to any phase of the superintendency. Even if you're a vet like I am, I'm considered to be a veteran now at 8 years total, 5 years, 5.5 years in one district, 8 years total. But even as a veteran, we have to do that. And just as you said that you called me, I've called you about stuff as well, and we have to do that and continue to network. Absolutely.
I was just sitting here thinking as you were sharing that, I did something, and a gentleman that I very, 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 I look highly on, Dr. Ron Hargrave. He called me one day and he said, "Don't do that no more." He said, "Don't walk into that trap." He called me 7:30 at night. Do not walk into that trap. You have to have those individuals that have your back, that when they can see you walking into something you don't need to be walking into, they tell you, no, don't walk that direction. So that's part of that network.
Well, Mr. Holley, you've done remarkably well tonight, and we certainly thank you for all of those. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience about something that's going on well in your district, or just any nuggets for our closing?
Well, this is something that's going well in my district, but it's personal. So
that's all right.
You've got to understand in this role, and you know this because I've met you, I've met your wife, I know your kids, I've seen them. You have to understand that your family comes first. We all have these positions, but these positions don't give us power. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean by title that you can lead people. And so we couldn't do these jobs if we didn't have the strong backbone of my wife, Natasha, at home, to be able to be that bouncing, that soundboard when I come home nights, and it's just like you want to pull what last little bit of hair you have out. So, the reason I say that's going good in my district, because she's allowed me to vent and allowed me to bounce ideas and even given me ideas. So, rely on those people that you have in your corner, those people that were there before we had these titles, before we had these neckties, before we had this platform to talk. We have to rely on those individuals to keep pushing us forward as well. So
awesome. I think everybody sees why I wanted to have you on this show. Just a wealth of wisdom, and although he's a much younger man than you can pay me for that later, than I am, full of wisdom and knowledge, and we're just proud of the work that you're doing in Tyrell County, as well as the vice chair of our Northeast RESA, and helping represent the districts of the Northeast now at the state level. So thank you for the work that you're doing. If you hold on just a minute, we'll talk a little bit about next week's broadcast, and then we'll come back for our closing. So next week, ladies and gentlemen, actually 2 weeks from tonight, our next podcast will air March 25th at 7 p.m. My guest is going to be Dr. Catherine Edmonds. She is Deputy Superintendent for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. She has also served in a couple of superintendencies in the northeastern part of North Carolina. The time for that broadcast will be 7 p.m. March 25th. We are indeed excited about the path that this broadcast is taking. I am pleased beyond measure to all of the calls, all of the comments, all of the positive vibes that I'm getting from this vision that I've had for quite some time now. The purpose of this show, of course, always is to just make sure that we shed a light on some things that might help all of us grow, learn a little bit more about education and learn a little bit more about educational leadership. And tonight's show, of course, is another example of that. Mr. Holley, thank you so much for being a part of the Wright experience. Anytime you need to come back on this forum and share more with us, we certainly will make that available for you. But thank you again for the work that you're doing. And we look forward to many, many, many more years of seeing you and your amazing leadership in public schools.
I appreciate it, Dr. Wright. And I just want to keep all of our young men in prayer as we have just recently lost a young fellow in our community here in Tyrell. I know you just recently experienced it in Hertford County and also in Elizabeth City. So, anything we can do, let's focus our efforts on not only just our young men, but getting all of our kids involved and showing them that, violence is not the way. So prayers to all of our families that have been affected by these tragedies over the last 2 weeks.
In fact, thank you for saying that. In fact, we lost one young man to senseless violence, and we actually also lost a female student this past weekend in a car accident in Raleigh. So it's tough times for us here in Hertford County, and so we thank you for the thoughts and prayers as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the broadcast, and we thank you for listening and watching.